The inky blackness of the Pacific Ocean swallowed everything. It was November 15th, 1942, and the air was thick with the scent of salt, smoke, and impending doom. Deep in what would soon be infamously known as Iron Bottom Sound, off Guadalcanal, a silent hunter moved through the complete absence of light. This wasn't some stealthy submarine. It was a behemoth of steel, the USS Washington, a fast battleship, displacing tens of thousands of tons, bristling with 9 16-inch guns. Her mission that night was stark, primal. Stop the Japanese battleship, Kirishima, from bombarding Henderson Field. Prevent American forces on the island from being annihilated. Keep hope alive. What happened next wasn't just a battle. It was an earthquake that shattered the very foundations of naval warfare. The night erupted. Not with the expected flash of muzzle or the glint of an enemy mast, but with the unseen, unheard hum of radar. Mark 8 fire control radar, an invisible eye, swept the void. In an instant that seemed to stretch into eternity, 16-inch thunder tore through the air. 42 massive shells, each weighing more than a small car, screamed through the darkness, targeting a ship the Japanese could not even perceive. Within terrifying minutes, the Imperial Japanese Navy battleship, Kirishima, a veteran of Pearl Harbor, was a burning wreck, her formidable 14-inch guns silenced forever. This wasn't the war Japan had planned to fight. This single brutal encounter in the pitch black of the Pacific wasn't merely the loss of a warship for the Imperial Japanese Navy. It was a catastrophic revelation. It laid bare a truth so unsettling, so profound, that it instantly rewrote every tactical manual, every strategic assumption, and every deeply ingrained doctrine the Japanese Navy held dear. American naval technology hadn't just advanced, it had vaulted decades ahead in a matter of mere months. The Americans possessed something the Japanese, in their heart of hearts, believed to be an impossibility, a fantastical delusion of science fiction. They had warships that could shoot with pinpoint accuracy while executing high-speed, evasive maneuvers in complete and utter darkness, guided not by human eyes, but by invisible electromagnetic sensors that pierced through smoke, through the most tempestuous weather, and through the absolute blackness of the Pacific night. To truly grasp the magnitude of this shock, we have to understand the world the Imperial Japanese Navy inhabited, the philosophy that underpinned their formidable strength. From the 1920s onwards, the IJN had meticulously honed its craft, dedicating countless hours to perfecting night combat. They saw it as their decisive advantage. Under the cover of darkness, human skill, superb optics, and aggressive torpedo tactics reigned supreme. Japanese sailors were legendary for their keen eyesight, their rigorous training in optical rangefinding, and their audacious night attacks. Doctrine dictated that accurate, long-range gunnery required stable courses and visual contact. You either shot accurately by holding a steady line, making yourself a predictable target, or you maneuvered aggressively for survival, sacrificing your gunnery precision. It was an either-or proposition, a fundamental truth of naval warfare as they understood it. Their ships, like the Kirishima, boasted the finest optical rangefinders in the world, and their crews had trained relentlessly to maximize this visual superiority in the low light of dusk or the chaos of night. Admiral Nobutake Kondo's force, approaching Guadalcanal that November night, was brimming with this confidence, a legacy of hard-won victories and deeply ingrained beliefs. But the USS Washington that night was operating under an entirely different set of rules. She possessed something beyond Japanese comprehension: the Mark 8 fire control radar. This wasn't just a passive sensor. It was an active targeting system that could track and engage targets from an astonishing 18,500 yards away in absolute darkness. When Washington's radar operators acquired Kirishima's signature, they didn't just detect a target. They achieved what Japanese naval theorists considered not merely difficult, but literally impossible. The American battleship maintained a constant, precise firing solution while simultaneously executing high-speed evasive maneuvers. She could shoot and turn, engage and survive. The implications were chilling, striking at the very heart of Japanese naval leadership's understanding of warfare. Night fighting, once Japan's decisive advantage, their ace in the hole, their spiritual domain, became utterly meaningless against opponents who treated darkness as an irrelevance, a mere inconvenience to be bypassed by technology. This singular performance by the USS Washington that night was more than just a battle. It was the dramatic culmination of years of American fast battleship development, a strategic commitment to a new vision of naval power. Between 1941 and 1944, 3 revolutionary classes of battleships emerged from American shipyards, each designed to solve problems the Japanese Navy didn't even realize they were facing yet. It wasn't just about bigger guns or thicker armor. It was about integration, speed, and adaptability. The North Carolina class, with ships like the USS North Carolina and the USS Washington themselves, introduced the very concept of the fast battleship into American doctrine. These behemoths displaced around 40,800 tons at full load, yet they could achieve a blistering 28 knots. Their main battery consisted of 9 16-inch 45 caliber Mark VI guns, delivering devastating firepower. But it was their secondary armament that truly began to hint at the future. 25-inch 38 caliber dual-purpose guns. These weren't just for engaging surface targets. They were formidable anti-aircraft weapons, capable of creating a truly devastating protective umbrella. The core idea behind these ships was revolutionary. They were designed to operate with aircraft carriers, maintaining formation speeds that the older, slower battleships of prior eras could never hope to match. This marked a profound shift away from the battleship-centric fleet action of Jutland and towards a carrier-centric fleet, with battleships acting as fast escorts and defensive linchpins. The 5-inch 38 guns, in particular, proved to be far more revolutionary than their designers initially envisioned. Gunnery tests in 1941 demonstrated an astonishing accuracy against fast-flying targets, reaching effective ranges of 12,000 to 13,000 feet, twice the effective range of previous American anti-aircraft weapons. When these already impressive guns were coupled with radar fire control and later the truly game-changing proximity fuse shells, they transformed into arguably the most effective naval anti-aircraft system in the world. Imagine the shock of a Japanese pilot, trained to expect predictable bursts, encountering an invisible wall of flak, seeming to anticipate his every move. Building on this foundation, the South Dakota-class battleships, USS South Dakota, USS Indiana, USS Massachusetts, and USS Alabama, refined the fast battleship concept, cleverly designed within the stringent limitations of the interwar naval treaties. These ships compressed the immense capabilities of the North Carolina class into a slightly smaller, 35,000-ton hull. Naval historians would later hail them as the finest treaty battleships ever constructed. Their protection scheme was legendary, incorporating 12.2 inches of inclined belt armor and a formidable 6 inches of deck armor, superior to any contemporary design. But the South Dakota class revealed something more profound about American design philosophy. Rather than simply maximizing the individual capabilities of a single ship, American engineers optimized for fleet operations. These battleships were designed to fight as integrated units within fast carrier task forces, providing a dense, impenetrable anti-aircraft umbrella that allowed the vulnerable aircraft carriers to operate safely in contested airspace. They were not lone wolves, they were vital organs in a larger interconnected system. Then came the Titans, the Iowa class, USS Iowa, USS New Jersey, USS Missouri, and USS Wisconsin. These ships represented American naval engineering completely unleashed from treaty restrictions, a pure expression of strategic intent. They displaced a staggering 56,088 tons fully loaded and could achieve an incredible 33 knots, making them not just powerful, but also among the fastest capital ships ever built. At 887 feet overall length, they were the longest battleships ever to grace the seas. Their 9 16-inch 50-caliber Mark VII guns could engage targets at an astonishing 23.64 miles, a range superior even to earlier American battleships. The design priorities of the Iowa class clearly articulated American strategic thinking. Speed unequivocally trumped protection. These ships were purpose-built to escort the new Essex-class carriers, which themselves could operate at 30 knots or more. They carried massive anti-aircraft batteries, initially 20 quad 40mm Bofors guns and 49 20mm Oerlikon weapons, numbers that would expand dramatically throughout the war as the horrifying threat of kamikazes intensified. Japanese naval intelligence, operating with outdated assumptions and limited information, struggled desperately to comprehend this new American fast battleship doctrine. Reconnaissance aircraft frequently misidentified these ships due to their unfamiliar, streamlined profiles and their unprecedented speed. Traditional Japanese tactics assumed enemy battleships would operate at a maximum of 21 knots, a predictable speed that allowed for precise calculations and ambush tactics. Fast American battleships shattered these fundamental assumptions, appearing with startling suddenness and devastating effect where Japanese forces expected only slow, lumbering, predictable movements. It was like trying to fight a ghost that moved faster than light. The technological chasm, the true measure of this disparity, became painfully apparent even before the Washington versus Hiroshima showdown. During the Battle of the Eastern Solomons on August 24, 1942, the USS North Carolina escorted the USS Enterprise during carrier operations. In a furious 8-minute engagement, her 5-inch guns were credited with downing between 7 and 14 Japanese aircraft. Japanese pilots, returning from the harrowing attack, reported an unprecedented accuracy from American anti-aircraft fire, describing defensive barrages that seemed guided by some supernatural precision, a wall of steel that simply wasn't there minutes before. They had never encountered anything like it. This supernatural precision had a name, and it was the proximity-fused ammunition. Developed under a veil of secrecy comparable to that of the Manhattan Project itself, these variable time, or VT, shells carried miniature radar systems within their noses. Instead of requiring a direct hit or relying on a perfectly timed fuse set by gun crews, these shells detonated automatically when an aircraft approached within lethal range. No direct impact was needed. A near miss became a kill. Statistical analysis later revealed the devastating impact. VT-fused 5-inch shells required an average of only 310 rounds to destroy one kamikaze aircraft, while conventional contact-fused shells required a staggering 1,162 rounds per kill. During the most intense kamikaze attacks, American ships could fire 100% VT-fused ammunition, creating truly impenetrable killing zones that Japanese aircraft, no matter how bravely piloted, simply could not penetrate. Imagine the psychological toll on a pilot flying into a sky suddenly erupting with invisible, perfectly timed explosions, with no discernible human element guiding the flak. It was terrifyingly effective. The Battle of the Philippine Sea, fought on June 19th and 20th, 1944, provided the ultimate, perfected demonstration of American fast battleship doctrine. Task Force 58, a colossal fleet, deployed 7 fast battleships in a sophisticated anti-aircraft configuration, arrayed like guardians around 4 carrier task groups. When the Japanese mobile fleet launched an overwhelming 473 aircraft in massive, desperate strikes, the American battleships, acting as an integrated defensive barrier, created what can only be described as an impenetrable steel dome. Japanese pilots encountered a nightmare unprecedented in naval warfare. Radar-directed fighter control, vectoring defending Hellcat and Corsair aircraft to interception points with uncanny precision, long before the attackers even sighted the fleet. Proximity-fused anti-aircraft shells creating deadly airbursts that filled the sky with lethal shrapnel, and coordinated defensive fire from dozens of ships that maintained their complex formations, while simultaneously unleashing a hurricane of lead and steel. The Americans, with these combined systems, shot down an astonishing 243 Japanese aircraft, suffering only 15 losses of their own. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa's after-action report chillingly revealed Japanese shock at American capabilities that seemed to anticipate their every movement, as if the enemy could read their minds. The technological disparity, however, extended far beyond individual engagements or anti-aircraft effectiveness. American fast battleships operated as integral components within vast carrier task forces. Their sophisticated radar networks shared information seamlessly through Advanced Combat Information Centers, or CICs, which plotted friendly and enemy units in real time on massive display screens. Task force commanders, sitting in these dimly lit, buzzing nerve centers, could coordinate defensive measures across dozens of ships simultaneously, reacting to threats with speed and precision never before seen. The Japanese forces, in stark contrast, possessed no comparable capability. Individual ships largely fought as isolated units, sharing rudimentary information through signal flags, a cumbersome, slow method, or through radio communications that American electronic warfare systems could effortlessly intercept, decipher, and jam, turning Japan's attempts at coordination into strategic liabilities. When Japanese radar technology finally did appear in late 1943, it offered basic search capabilities, but utterly lacked the fire control integration that made American systems so devastatingly effective. It was like having eyes but no brain to process what they saw. Even outside the direct ship-to-ship battles, the superiority was stark. Shore bombardment missions revealed another dimension of American technological advantage. The Iowa-class's 16-inch 50-caliber guns could fire 2,700-pound armor-piercing shells over 23 miles, or unleash 1,900-pound high-explosive shells that created craters 50 feet wide and 20 feet deep, enough to swallow a small house. And again, radar fire control allowed for precision targeting, regardless of weather or visibility conditions. Japanese coastal defense forces reported what they could only describe as supernatural accuracy from American naval gunfire. Shells arrived with mechanical, almost surgical precision on target coordinates, destroying hardened gun positions, vital supply dumps, and command centers with devastating, demoralizing effect. Traditional methods of concealment, like generating smoke screens or relying on bad weather, proved utterly useless against radar-guided fire control. It was like being targeted by an invisible sniper who could see through walls. The psychological impact on Japanese forces was profound, corrosive, and ultimately crippling. Veteran naval officers who had dominated the early Pacific battles with their skill, courage, and tactical acumen found themselves fighting an enemy that operated by entirely different rules, a new quantum of warfare. American ships appeared faster, shot more accurately, and demonstrated defensive capabilities that Japanese doctrine had literally declared impossible. Admiral Minechi Koga, who commanded the combined fleet after Admiral Yamamoto's death, reported a growing and palpable demoralization among Japanese naval units. Their traditional advantages in night fighting, their legendary torpedo warfare, their individual ship handling skills, all of it meant nothing, absolutely nothing, against opponents who could engage accurately beyond visual range while maneuvering defensively at high speed. It was like bringing a sword to a gunfight, only to find the gun could shoot you from miles away in the dark. This technological and doctrinal chasm directly fueled the desperation that led to the horrific kamikaze tactics. These suicide attacks emerged partly from a grim Japanese recognition that conventional attack methods simply could not penetrate American defenses. But even these ultimate acts of courage, born of despair, encountered the relentless wall of American technological superiority. Radar picket destroyers, stationed far ahead of the main fleet, detected incoming kamikaze formations at extreme ranges, vectoring defending fighters to interception points long before the attackers could even reach the main fleet. Statistical analysis, heartbreaking in its cold logic, revealed that despite the desperate bravery of the kamikaze pilots, only 14% of their aircraft survived to hit their targets, and of those ships that were hit, only a mere 8.5% actually sank. The ultimate sacrifice was, more often than not, swallowed by the sheer technological advantage of the enemy. This technological revolution was not just about brilliant scientists and clever engineers. It was also inextricably linked to an overwhelming industrial capacity. American shipyards, humming with unparalleled efficiency, produced 24 fast battleships between 1937 and 1944. Simultaneously, the American electronics industry mobilized on an epic scale to mass-produce the complex radar systems and proximity fuses that were so critical. Procurement contracts for electronics alone surged from $60 million in 1942 to an astonishing $450 million in 1945. Over 100 American companies collaborated to manufacture a staggering 20 million VT fuses during the war. Japan, despite its military prowess and engineering talent, possessed no comparable industrial base for advanced electronics production. It could produce superb optics, but not the miniaturized radar components or vacuum tubes needed for advanced electronics. Admiral Suemu Toyota, the final wartime commander of the combined fleet, openly acknowledged Japan's profound inability to counter these overwhelming American technological advantages. The scale of the disparity was simply too vast. The final, bitter irony of this technological chasm unfolded on September 2, 1945. A symbol of American power, the USS Missouri, an Iowa-class battleship, hosted the surrender ceremonies in Tokyo Bay. Japanese naval officers, ascending the gangway to board the Missouri, were confronted not just with the physical presence of a victorious enemy, but with a living, breathing testament to their defeat. They encountered technology that represented their downfall more profoundly than any individual battle. Radar systems extending hundreds of miles into the horizon, integrated combat information centers plotting the invisible dance of war, and weapons that required no direct hits to kill. Admiral Minoru Genda, the brilliant architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, later admitted that while Japanese naval aviation was superior in skill and experience during the early war years, American radar technology and industrial capacity created systematic advantages that Japanese training, however rigorous, could simply not overcome. He specifically cited numbers and numerical inferiority, especially in radar-equipped ships, as the decisive factors. The shock experienced by Japanese naval forces, the profound disorientation that began that night in Iron Bottom Sound, reflected a fundamental and irreversible shift in naval warfare. It moved irrevocably from an era of individual ship combat, where the heroism of a single vessel or a daring captain could turn the tide, to an era of integrated system operations. Ships were no longer designed to fight alone, but as interconnected components of a larger, intelligent whole. They were equipped with sensors that penetrated darkness and weather, armed with weapons that required no direct hits to achieve their devastating effect, and coordinated by unseen electromagnetic networks. By the time Japanese naval intelligence finally understood the true scope of American capabilities, the technological gap had not merely widened, it had become an insurmountable canyon. The night the USS Washington sank the Kirishima was far more than a tactical victory, however decisive. It was a thunderclap that announced a new dawn in naval warfare. It declared that American naval technology had evolved so rapidly, so profoundly, that it had moved beyond Japanese comprehension, leaving them fighting a war that no longer existed. In the oppressive darkness of Iron Bottom Sound, electromagnetic eyes had decisively replaced human vision. Mechanical computers had usurped human calculation, and radar-guided shells had eliminated the fundamental uncertainties of naval gunnery, transforming combat into a horrifyingly precise science. Japan had meticulously planned and prepared to fight the naval war of 1941, a conflict defined by human skill, visual range, and established doctrines. But America, through relentless innovation, strategic investment, and unparalleled industrial might, had arrived to fight the war of 1945. The enduring lesson from this historical pivot is stark and timeless. In an age of accelerating change, true strategic advantage lies not just in current capabilities, but in the relentless pursuit of innovation, the courage to adapt doctrine, and the industrial capacity to translate scientific breakthroughs into deployable systems. History consistently reminds us that technological leaps can, in the blink of an eye, render even the most entrenched and successful paradigms utterly obsolete. The forces that don't innovate, that don't adapt, that don't invest in the future, risk being left behind, fighting the last war, while their adversaries redefine the next. It's a powerful testament to the idea that tomorrow's conflicts are won by yesterday's foresight and today's relentless pursuit of what seems impossible.